Hi, good morning. Welcome to the Revenue Fixed Cost Committee meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order, but I would like to read pursuant to the Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Revenue Fixed Cost Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirements to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so on their television by turning to Comcast Channel 99 or Verizon Channel 28 or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access processing in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other corresponding records of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So I'll call the meeting to order. And the main agenda today, Jim, do we have any minutes that need to be approved?
Yeah, I'm looking that up right now, Lynn. If I find them, I'll
We can move it to the end.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody got the new email this morning. There was a small adjustment. I had been working on the salary reserves and I hadn't updated the worksheet because we basically just finished some of our numbers and calculations yesterday. So I apologize. So I had to send out a new email this morning to everybody. Hope everybody got it with the new spreadsheet. It only changed by 0.3%. So it wasn't a big impact. So it went from a negative increase of 1.47 to a negative increase of 1.05. So overall, the shared and fixed costs really are not, they're not going up. They're actually going down, which is in big part due to the reserves and the transfers from free cash that are being recommended by the town manager that I put in this spreadsheet so that we knew what they were. So overall, the increase is minor. We can go, on the bigger items. Group insurance this year, I'm projecting, and Melissa can speak to it further because she's been attending the GIC meetings. We have a 6% increase over FY21 budget. Unemployment, I still left that a little high because I'm not sure where we're going with the crisis with the pandemic and whether people are still going to be filing for unemployment because we get hit. As you can see, we've been hit pretty hard in 2021 that we hadn't budgeted for. Payroll taxes, that's an increase, which is standard because we have steps and COLAs and things like that. So we have to pay the Medicare tax on that. So that's a minor increase. Employee benefits is staying the same. Police and fire accidental pretty much is going up based on the recommendations of the insurance company. It appears, it's going up approximately 7% over last year. And then I always put an amount in there to cover any types of claims or anything like that. Workers' comp, that is unfortunately a large increase. We have actually had seen over the last 2 years major increases due to salaries. We're reviewing the audit right now to confirm that it's as accurate as possible because I'm concerned with it going up in a 2-year period, and that they were telling us it's going to be a 12% increase this year. So it's a hit. Liability insurance is pretty much it's going up minor. I'm recommending a 2.5% increase over last year with a $25K for claims. And that when I'm saying claims, I'm meaning we get new vehicles, we bring new vehicles on, we remove new vehicles. So the newer vehicles are a little higher cost. So we have to have some adjustments throughout the year. And we do have a new fire truck that we're recommending to in the CIP. So that will be coming on as well. So we needed the additional funding for that. County retirement is going up 7.25%, and that's per their assessment. And that's also taking into account the quick pay discount from them of $111,000 if we pay it the first week of July, which we always do. Debt is gone down a little bit, slightly. The town manager is still, we've recommended still the finance committee reserve level funded at $1.5 million. Salary reserves 144, and then overlay. And then the state assessments are based on the governor's budget right now. So, and then the recommendations for transfers for the capital stabilization and regular stabilization based on the financial policies to keep them within the agreement on the financial policies. Okay.
As far as the group insurance, so I'm one of the 17 commissioners, and we are planning to vote on rates at either the February or March meeting. But there's going to be no plan changes at all. So that's a good thing, I think. The only plan change that they are talking about implementing is just making it easier for people to get their mental health benefits, because that's been a pretty hot topic. But they're not planning on any plan changes. So, I don't think we'll see anything extreme. It'll probably be around that 6% mark. I don't think we'll see a big decrease since there's not going to be plan design. I just want to remind people with the unemployment, we did not have a lot of layoffs on the town or school side. We did see a lot of increase in unemployment, and that was for two reasons. One, there was a huge amount of unemployment fraud across the entire country, and the ability to basically appeal that fraud was very delayed. And so what the government was doing was just giving everyone the unemployment, approving them all, and then allowing us to appeal belatedly, which was different than the process ever before, one. And then two, there were some people who didn't work for us anymore, but still ended up on our unemployment based on the amount of time that they worked at their new job. So, we often would have a liability because of that. And just a reminder that we are not insured for unemployment, so it's an actual cost for municipalities.
And Melissa, I would just echo what you said. Across the superintendent listserv, across schools across the Commonwealth, they saw unemployment claims, that they've never seen before, with folks that, frankly, not here in North Andover specifically, but across the state, they weren't familiar with.
Melissa,
I mean, we have actually even had some employees that work here that have gotten they were hacked, and somebody got their social security number and filed claims under their names, and they've got to fight this now because, I mean, if you watch on the news, there's a lot of people that are getting bills from in 1099s, and they never even got the money. So it's becoming a big issue, real big issue.
we're having a situation where when everything first broke, people were told, even if you keep your regular job, if you're losing because you had a part-time job, put in for that. And now it's coming back that they're actually looking at that and possibly looking for the money back. And they're asking us, and we're saying, yeah, they kept their full-time position. So it could impact people in that regard too. Melissa, I have a question on the group insurance. Are there any discussions around the impact that us living in, kind of protected status for this period of time is going to have an impact on rates because of usage going down, and possibly, other than COVID, health? Maybe, I don't know, are there discussions about the impact this could have on, in the future years, health insurance costs?
Yeah, Jim, I'll have to share the spreadsheets with you. So they did have a data analysis done where basically they went through all the different types of appointments. They showed what had decreased and what had increased. So mental health visits had increased,
Yep.
but drug and alcohol visits, so drug and alcohol rate had actually dramatically decreased. But so the way that they show the delta is that they think when the pandemic starts to falter off, we'll actually see drug and alcohol visits increase again, right? Primary care visits had kind of faltered off, then started to go back up again. But secondary things like mammograms, colonoscopies had all fallen down. So they think we'll actually see that peak, right? So it's a really interesting kind of analysis. I'm happy to share the graphs with you. They were actually pretty helpful. And now what they're basically looking at is data showing the number of town and municipal employees and state employees who are on the GIC who have had COVID versus now the vaccinations. And the cluster of COVID cases really is in the Boston, Essex County area. It's an interesting analysis to see. So yeah, I can forward those slides over so you can see them.
Thanks.
I have a question regarding the Finance Committee reserve. So it looks like the projection for FY21 is 0. Could you talk a little bit about that?
So I haven't put any projection in because I'm not quite sure if we're even going to need to use it. So the projection won't go in for 2021 until we decide that we are going to actually have any shortfalls in any of the budgeted line items in a department. We'll have to come to you and request use of it. So at this point right now, I don't see an issue since we haven't, knock on wood, I mean, this is the biggest storm we've had so far. So we've been okay with snow and ice because that's typically an area that we have a huge shortfall in when we get a lot of storms. But I will analyze the budgets we just closed January, so I've got to reconcile through January, and I'll look at my reports and see where we're at and project out the balance of the year. That'll determine if there's any areas that we might need to dip into that and come to the Finance Committee and request use. So
right. We also had a spending freeze on. Right. So due to our spending freeze, we had a lot of positions we didn't fill until 6 months into the budget, and we still have some positions that we haven't filled at all. So, I think that has opened up more capacity in the budget than we typically would have.
Okay. And then could you just remind anyone Melissa, who may be, or Lynn, who may be watching, what the MOU kind of said in terms of when we utilize those funds, what comes first in that order?
Yep. So the MOU between the schools and the town basically talks about COVID spending. And it also talks about basically budgetary constraints that we feared we might see in fiscal year 21 and safeguards in order to protect us against those. So we were not allowed to fund any of our non-mandated new initiatives through the first quarter. Then any deficits due to COVID, first we would go internally in the budget to places like the reserve. And then second, we would go out to our free cash. So, and then stabilization basically in that order. And so right now, what will happen is if we don't need to use the reserve account to make up things like snow and ice or overtime, et cetera, right? We would go to that first before we would put the article. The article will go on town meeting no matter what, but we would go to that first and then withdraw the article or reduce the article at town meeting from free cash, which would be great if we could do that.
That would be great. Thank you. That's really helpful.
So does anybody else have any other questions? Does everybody feel comfortable with what's going to be placed in the budget?
Yeah.
And what's recommended? I mean,
I have another question regarding OPEB. Could you just explain what the $75,000 in the FY22 recommendation is? I know that's says determined by TM. So what is that comprised of?
okay, so we typically, for the last probably 4 or 5 years, we've been taking small amounts out of and incorporating it into the operating budget to transfer to the OPEB. So we started with 25,000, we increased it to 50. In the last couple of years, it's been $75,000. So I kept that to keep it within the budget, $75,000 just as a transfer to OPEB as a standard annual transfer. I mean, would I like it to be more? Absolutely, but in a tough year like this, I think 75 is okay for now. I know we need to keep funding that, and at some point we'll increase it, but that's basically, it's just a level fund from year to year.
Right. And so the easy way to think about that, right? It's OPEB is for people who are not playing inside baseball is other post-employment benefits, right? So there's lots of costs that go along with our retirees, and people think about that with a private business, right? And the things that you might get after you retire. For us, it's not just your retirement and your health insurance. Those things are fully funded within the budget, but there's other liabilities as well. And communities historically haven't done the best job of funding for those liabilities. And so we've all made a commitment to try to start thinking about that moving forward.
But based on our policies, that's a pretty inconsequential amount compared to what I think had been discussed previously, right? So because of the financial situation we're facing in FY22, that's a pretty small amount in comparison to what we would in a better year be considering. Is that a appropriate statement?
So last year we did 75 plus 66.
Okay.
So it's about half what we did last year.
Okay.
Yeah, and it looks, oh, sorry, and it, I mean,
Anyway,
it looks, pretty, like, I'm looking here, actual FY17 is 50, then 200, then 75, then, 193, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So in an ideal world, it would be better if we could do much more, but right now in 22, it's a tough year, and we're at least doing a token.
And I think what the auditors really want to see and what the bond rating agencies really want to see is that you've created the trust and that you're making a good faith effort to fund it. And so there's maybe one or two other communities in the Commonwealth that actually took debt to fund their entire liability and have paid it that way. And I believe that's Wellesley. But other than that, right, every community has pretty much created this trust and is doing basically what we're doing and just funding it slowly with small amounts. A lot of communities, when they left the GIC, like we did, were able to send their funds over, and that was really helpful. So I think we're actually doing better than a lot of other people, but long-term goal is to start getting that more funded.
How much is in there now?
For 5 million.
Yeah.
Right. And our goal is how much?
I think, Jim, because you were part of that committee, I thought it was 10% of the, what was it? It's not the full funding. I mean, the full funding is $127 million.
Yep.
It's I think on the annual cost of what it would cost to pay out, we want to have at least that 10% of that in the fund. And I think we need to get up to like $9 million to do that. And it's
I thought it was like
moving
10 or
target every year because of course the
Right.
OPEB balance changes every year.
right.
And so did the gas fee, right? So there was like
Yes.
protocols for how you even accounted for the liability, which they recently changed. So a lot of us have policies that kind of that aren't applicable anymore.
Right.
I
Which
just-
makes it even more complicated.
I thought it was important that the annual amount really isn't what's going to get us to our goal. It's these opportunities where, large amounts of money, whether it's the change to the GIC or, some influx that we had anticipated, we use that as well. And so we're about halfway there now. And I think it's important for people to realize that.
Right. We've achieved a lot. I think we're not there yet, but we have made a great effort to get there. And I know within the policy and through the committee that was put together, the discussion was, well, when we pay the retirement and the retirement is fully funded, do we then take those funds and start putting them towards this? I mean, that
Yep.
would be a decision for the board and everything to make, and the town manager, but that was one of the suggestions as well. So,
Mhm.
I mean, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, and Jim, I'd echo your sentiments. Being connected with so many superintendents, this is an issue that I'd say 90% of the communities in Massachusetts have kicked the can down the road. And if they are making any contributions, it's very minimal, like as a token contribution. And I think North Andover is making good strides towards a real solution and doing the best we can. So.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? So can we take a vote to vote these numbers? And of course, if anything changes between now and actual town meeting, the town manager will make appropriate changes as necessary, or we could meet again if need be. But I think we're, again, being conservative, but making sure that we're covered up on all bases.
I make a motion.
Go ahead. All
to
in favor?
believe what Lynn said.
Okay, all
Now
in favor?
we need a second.
Right. And I think we
So-
need to do it by roll call, don't we? By say your name and then what you vote.
But you need a second to it, right?
Oh, sorry, I'll second Donovan O'Connell.
Jim,
Yes,
you're in favor?
Yes.
Sasha?
Aye.
Okay, then, okay, so we move to approve these recommendations, and we can now move on to the budget at a future date.
I have a question before we do that, is, you know, while we're in this meeting. I just wanted to circle back on the revenues that we voted on and discussed. Are there any updates? I just want to make sure, because I know that when we reviewed them last year, after, you know, as things progress, we get more information. And I just want to confirm that they're, you know, still in the same place they were when we had that initial discussion, and there's nothing further to talk about or any other, you know, room in there, right?
There is one small change, and it's in the unrestricted general aid, and it's about $100,000 then?
Yep, about 114 or so.
$114,000. So based on my conversations with the chair of Senate Ways and Means, he was very confident that we could increase our budget by that amount. It's not something we typically do. So we typically use last year's state aid and bring it forward. In this instance, we're pushing a little bit to try to make sure that we're capturing everything that we can for next year, or anything that we reasonably can. You know, Jim and I had this conversation the other day, how it would be nice if they would change the state budgeting process to match the towns and cities budgeting process so that we could have a little bit more certainty in our budgeting, but that's not going to happen. So we did bring in the budget up about $114,000, and we used that to make sure that we kept the Finance Committee reserve full.
Understood. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Jim, did you find them, any minutes?
I did, and I shared them with everybody.
Oh,
It was November 19th. I had shared them and no one had any corrections, so you've seen them, but I also reshared them during the meeting.
okay.
Okay.
right,
This is Donovan O'Connell. I would move to accept the minutes.
We have a second?
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Perfect, so the minutes are approved. Costs, the shared costs are approved. Do I have a motion to adjourn if there's no more questions?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you, everybody.